Good evening, everybody. I got an email request to do problems 9, 10, and 11 here. So I'll do at least number 9 and let you guys try to figure out the other ones. Um, let's go ahead and see what it's asking us. It wants us to find the next 3 terms in each sequence. So we have to find the next 3 terms. And then it wants us to identify the constant difference, which I've been calling in class, I've been calling that growth. Because growth just makes more sense, but constant difference is the same thing. It's the amount that we're constantly increasing by. And then it wants us to write a recursive and explicit function. So let's go ahead and get started with just the things we have highlighted here. So what are the next 3 terms in the sequence? Well, we have to figure out how the sequence is moving. So when we go from 3 to 8, and then from 8 to 13, and then from 13 to 18, we see that we're adding 5 at each step. 5, 5, 5. And in fact, that's our constant difference. Our constant difference is we're adding 5. So if we were to add 5 to 23, that becomes 28. If we were to add to 5 to 28, that becomes 33. If we were to add to 5 to that, becomes 38. So that's going to be our constant difference. And then wants us to write the recursive function. Look at that sloppy line. This is what happens when you use a mouse instead of a pen. And then wants us to write the recursive function. And remember, our recursive function is where we're referring to the previous. And the general form for a recursive function in an arithmetic sequence, and we know this is arithmetic because we're adding each step, is going to be f of x equals f of x minus 1 plus our growth. So for this function, it's going to be, well, each step is f of x minus 1, and then we got to add our growth here, which is 5. So plus 5. And that is our recursive function. Then it wants us to do the explicit function. And so remember, our general form of the explicit function is f of x equals our growth times x plus our n sub 0. So when I try to write this, all I have to do is plug in that growth again, right? So f of x equals 5x. And then it asks for our n sub 0, so we have to figure out what our 0th term is. But what's going on with this equation, or with this sequence, pardon me, is that we have our first term, second term, third term. We don't have a 0th term, so we kind of have to work backwards. So if there were a 0th term, what would it be? Well, we'd have to subtract 5 from 3 to give us a -2. So in this case, our 0th term, our n sub 0, would be -2. So this would be -2. And so that would be our explicit function. What else does it ask us to do? It wants us to circle where you see the common difference. And so I didn't really circle it. I kind of did it in green here. This is our common difference. This is our g. So our common difference in our recursive equation is right here. That's the plus 5. And our common difference in our explicit equation is right here. It's the coefficient on the x. Okay? And then it reminds us the first term is not the 0th term. That's why it worked backwards. Okay? So that's what you're going to be doing for all of these. You're going to be completing each sequence. You're going to write down what the common difference was, and then use these general forms of the recursive and the explicit functions of arithmetic equations or arithmetic sequences to figure out what your recursive and explicit functions are going to be for these two. And that should get you going. And if you have any questions, just ask me in the morning.